Hi, I'm Peter from Coffee Pass, and today we're looking at Pressurestats and how they relate to the anatomy of a coffee machine. Pressurestats, what are they? Well, effectively, they're these things. So this is a small Mata, this is a bigger Serai. They do come in different brands. What the function of these things are is they're basically switches controlled by pressure. And the pressure in a sense of a coffee machine really is dependent on, temperature. So the more the pressure you have, the higher the temperature is in that boiler. And depending on your setup, if it's a heat exchange or a twin boiler, it really depends on what that pressure is doing. On a heat exchange machine like this, so this is actually a rocket appartamento. You've got the boiler that's heat exchange. So you've got the boiler with water, and the bottom half of the water is where the element sits, and it's the water used for your hot water tap. The top half is where your steam sits, and the pipe which runs through here called the heat exchange is where your coffee water goes through. So water comes from the reservoir tank across the heat exchange and out the group head. The hotter the boiler is, the more steam it has. But in the case of a heat exchange machine, also means that the higher the temperature of your brew is, your coffee. So there's a correlation there. So you need to adjust these pressure stats that you have enough pressure in the boiler for steam and the coffee sitting at the right temperature. If this machine was a twin boiler machine, let's say in the rocket range, something like a R58 or any twin boiler machine, the pressure stat would be controlling the rear boiler. So the rear boiler would have your hot water and your steam, and your front boiler would be a saturated boiler full of water, which would be controlled by a thermostat. And then you'd have, or thermostat or PID actually, and then you'd have full control of the temperature at the group head. The difference between these and thermostats is these are based on pressure, not temperature. And the way they work is that generally they're connected to a pipe, and that pipe goes to the top of the boiler. So as the pressure rises in the top of the boiler, it goes up that pipe and pushes up a membrane here, or in the smaller case here. And that membrane, when it pushes up, it cuts off a micro switch. So in this case, a little micro switch here. In this case, you've got the micro switch here. And that micro switch is basically controlling the element. So as the pressure rises, it cuts off the element. As the pressure decreases, it cuts it back on. And that's controlling the temperature. So using a pressure stat, there is a bit of a band where temperature rises, cuts off the element, drops, cuts it back in, and it cycles through that. The alternative to that is, just say on a dual purpose boiler, like a Sylvia, you'd have multiple thermostats, so low and high, it cuts between that. And on, just say a PID machine, you'd have your PID on your front boiler. That's doing the same function, but without pressure on temperature at a very narrow range. But you'd still most likely have a pressure stat on your rear boiler, like you see on the commercial Lama Zorko or on a Rocket R58 on the rear boiler, etc. So to recap, the function of these is to control the element, turning it on and off, which controls the pressure of the machine, and in turn, that sort of reflects the temperature. So on a heat exchange machine, the pressure is how much steam you have, and the temperature is out your group head. Now, ideally, commercially, you generally run the boilers at 1.1 bar, and on domestics, you tend to run them a bit higher, generally around the 1.3. It will depend machine to machine, but that's a rough indicator. On these, the adjustments on the top here, you can adjust them up and down. Same thing on the smaller ones, the adjustments on the top, you can also adjust them up and down. So within reason, there is a range you can adjust them, and all pressure stats will have a range which will tell you the lowest point and the highest point. So depending on your machine, you want to get a pressure stat that has the range that you're looking for. But generally speaking, if you're buying them from a coffee company, they're pressure stats that are designed for coffee machines, so that's not really something you generally need to look at. Now, how do you know you need to replace your pressure stat? Effectively, what happens is when they kind of fail or age, sometimes on the bigger commercial ones, the switch here starts sticking, and basically it either sticks closed or sticks open. So depending on what, it might not heat up your machine because it's not connecting, or it won't stop your machine from heating up, so it will go too hot and your safety valve will release. So effectively, if you're starting to have a problem where your machine won't heat up, it could be your pressure stat, or it could be your element or a switch, but many times a pressure stat. And if it's heating up too much and the safety valve is popping, then it's probably your pressure stat. On a domestic sense, on the smaller ones, they tend to sometimes just fail with age, where the membrane gets a little bit older. Now, it's common that you do have to replace them. Hard to say when, but generally possibly on that 5-year mark. But like everything, depending on the way you use your machine, how often it gets used, the environment, the climate, that date will vary a bit. That's when you know you need to replace a Pressurestat. You should be an electrician to replace these. So as much as we have this machine open, it's actually not connected and we're just trying to show you the machine. If you are opening machines, you should be an electrician or give it to your local coffee tech. Hope this look into Pressurestats has been informative. If you've got any specific questions or any other questions, hit us up in the comments below and we'll get back to you. And like always, if you've liked this video, please hit that subscribe button. It makes us smile and helps us get better content out to you guys. Thank you.